Record. Hello. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. I'm glad it's Friday. But
Amen. Alisha, welcome back to the Perinatal Podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you here as always.
free to be here. It's exciting to be back with a whole new name and everything.
I
So
know, rebrand. I was actually thinking I'll put the link in the episode show notes. If you are listening to this episode, listeners, and you have not listened to Alicia's first episode, finish this one now, but then skip on back to the other one, which I will put in the show notes because we already have had conversations before.
yeah.
Yeah, so wonderful. All right, so catch me up. What is going on with you these days?
Lots of exciting new ventures. I'm still
Yes.
doing therapy, still have a virtual practice, enjoying that work. It's going well.
Yeah.
But in the last, I don't even know, in the last of 2023, I don't know how many months it's been, I started a second business and I'm currently working towards my certification for coaching.
Mm.
And I'm now doing a bunch of fun endeavors in the coaching world. So, very separate from my therapy business and hat. They're separate companies and all of that. But I still bring that expertise and background I have as a therapist into the
Mm.
coaching world. But it's a fun and different space. And it's been exciting to kind of use some of those creative energies and something new and different and get to reach more people. So, and even a different kind of population. So, I'm excited.
Yeah. Can you, for our listeners who may be a little confused, because we see, on Instagram, right? We see all these, take this master class. We see all these, I do this thing. We see all these coaches, right?
Mhm.
Can you help people understand kind of what the difference between therapy and coaching and like certainly tell them a little bit more about your program that you're taking with Liz and give us
Mhm.
a little more peek into the story.
Yeah. So, to be a therapist, you have to have some sort of credentials and licensure, which means that you went to school, you got some form of a degree, you passed some kind of test, you did some set of hours. So different degrees require different things. You have LCSWs, which is what we are. You have LPCs, LMFTs. You can have psychologists, a psychiatrist, right? So you're getting all these different types of folks, but the theme there is that you have an education, a backing from an accredited school and from an accredited board, that you've passed a test and that you've said, I am certified and allowed to do X, Y, and Z. And within every degree and licensure, there are different rules and kind of guidelines that you have to follow and keep up with. The other unique thing about therapy is that it generally involves a diagnosis, especially if you're using insurance. So it's something that we is more medical model based in certain ways, and there is a problem, there's a diagnosis. I'm coming in with a level of expertise in X, Y, or Z area, and then I'm going to partner and work with you, but offer my expertise along the way. Maybe there's many different treatment modalities, things like that, to help resolve said problems, symptoms, etc., help you function better. And that's sort of the goal of therapy, especially in the world of insurance when we're billing and we're using like diagnosis and codes and things like that.
Mhm.
Also, something you can do, you can use insurance for therapy, right?
Right.
So I appreciate the structure. I appreciate the checks and balances. I think it's so important that that has so many like regulations on some level because we are dealing with things like mental health and big diagnoses, and we want to make sure people aren't just kind of like free reign doing whatever they want, and
Right.
to keep everyone safe, right?
Yes.
The therapist, the client, etc. But then with coaching, which is a little bit more like the Wild West, it has gotten much more popular. So my guess is in the years to come, it's going to be potentially maybe become more regulated. I don't really know, but I could see people maybe trying to do that just because it has become so popular in a very profitable industry.
Mhm.
We always, people like to have an in on the piece of the pie, so to speak. But it is pretty much anyone could show up and say they are a coach. Now, is that the coach you want? Maybe
Right.
not, maybe. But you don't have to have certification. You don't have to be accredited. You don't even have to necessarily have proof that you have special expertise in whatever it is that you're coaching on. It's a little more, you should probably do a little more vetting, right? But with coaching, we're not diagnosing. There is no getting into the past. We're not unpacking things, looking backwards. We're not billing insurance. It's all about now and the future.
Yes.
And so setting very clear goals. It's often more short term. Like if you're with a coach for a goal for a really long time, are you doing good coaching there, right? The goal is it's more short term, it's more concrete. As the consumer, you are totally in charge. The coach almost doesn't even have to be in the room, essentially, if they're really doing their job, but they are there to ask the questions, to help keep you accountable, to help guide and navigate. But it's separate, that I don't need the expertise in what you need to be coached around to help you out. Whereas if you were coming to me as a therapy client wanting to work on, let's say, your ADHD, but that's not really a specialty of mine. I know a little bit about it, but I don't have a lot of expertise tools to offer you. And I probably wouldn't be the best therapist for you in that setting.
Sure.
That kind of. So I think those are some of the bigger, like, future and present for coaching. Past is a huge part of therapy. We don't touch the past in coaching. That's not that space. That's not what it's for. I don't care why Christmas is hard for you. You just want it to be easier. Let's figure out how it's going to be easier, right? Whereas in therapy, I'd be like, well, tell me more. What happened when you were a kid? Blah, blah. I'd want to unpack all of that. So it's hard to wear the different hats, but they're really unique, but there is some overlap. I think you can definitely do some coaching and therapy. You should never be doing therapy and coaching.
Right.
But, and you shouldn't have your therapy client should not become your coaching client, and vice versa. Right. Again, I think just to make it less confusing and to really keep the integrity of the space and the relationship, because again, there are different rules of interactions with clients and things like that. It's always helpful to keep them pretty separate, but that's sort of like the big differences. Wow. It can get more nuanced, but I think that's maybe an easy way to kind of understand it.
No, I mean, I think obviously we could do a whole 60 minutes on just the differences in that, but that really makes so much sense, because I do think people come here and listen because they want to understand more things. I know I personally, professionally have found stressors from regulations, limitations, no federal licensure for social workers, for example. And yeah, I love like a very solution focused vantage point, right? Like sometimes, I took the solution focused brief therapy training for 3 days out in Colorado, which was amazing. And they were talking about, there are no longitudinal studies that show that you have to unpack a trauma to be able to move forward from it. You can just talk about where you want to go and why you want to be there. I loved your example of Christmas. Like, Coach Alisha does not care why. Coach Alisha wants to figure out, what are we doing in 2023 to make these holidays less miserable for you? And let's go. Whereas therapist Alicia's like, so when you were a child, or whatever.
Yeah. And I do want to mention that there are certified coaches, and the International Coaching Federation is validated. It's amazing. Just the thing is, you don't have to have that accreditation to say you're a coach or offer coaching services. Whereas I have to have a license and my degree behind, and like to put an LCSW after my name. I can't just say, today I'm going to be that. And that would be illegal. I'd be in big trouble. So I believe training is always helpful. I'm currently in a training program with Liz Lasky. She's amazing. She's a therapist.
Shout out Liz Lasky.
And it's a coaching certification program for helping professionals. So it's great to be amongst my own people and dive in there with the struggles of the differences and how to unlearn what we've learned as therapists. But again, it's not required. So just as a consumer, that's something to be thoughtful of, is when you're looking into getting a coach, you want to maybe see, do they have a certification? It means they went that extra step, and that is a little more credibility. Or if they don't, maybe they don't need it, but what actual expertise or training or experience do they have to really offer this for that price point? Or could you get the same advice from your local, hardware store about how to build the bench? So I think it's just sort of knowing that it doesn't come with the same blue check as therapists do. In the coaching world, you maybe have to dig a little bit deeper.
Okay, I like that, the blue check. Yeah, that makes sense. And I love, so obviously, I will post, alisha.bowker.mudrock, and all of the other places that people can find you, sign up for her newsletter. We're going to talk about some of her offerings. All of that will be in the show notes. But I love like your energy of like reclaiming your yes. And that's something that I get, for me, I always get energized by looking on your, I mean, obviously we text daily anyway, separately on Instagram, but I love it. I think it's so great. Can you kind of talk to people about like, how did that kind of become one of the things that was so motivating for you, and why is it important to reclaim your yes?
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of different types of clients over my years in the therapist world, and I also just have a ton of girlfriends around my age,
Yeah.
naturally.
Yeah.
And I think one of the constant themes that just continues to pop up is how, particularly as people born female, we're socialized to be so compliant, to put
Yes.
ourselves last,
Yes.
to take the path of least resistance, to not be too loud, too big, too much of a problem.
Mm.
And especially if you grow up in any sort of religious community that evangelical culture can speak to, you're just really, your voice is muted, or it's taught to be less than, or it's
Be
just
meek and
not.
mild.
Yes. And that bothers me because I don't think that's real. And I think it leads to a life of feeling unfulfilled, unhappy, resentful. It can lead to like a lot of abuse dynamics, and it's ripe for people to take advantage and things like that. So, as a coach, I really wanted to market to women like 20s to 40s. Obviously, maybe someone outside of that hits, but that's kind of the target audience that I'm generally thinking of when I'm putting things out. But just around empowerment and how to reclaim your yes, in the sense that I'll say yes because I want to, not because I feel like I have to, or I'm guilted into it, or I'm too afraid to say no. But how can I become more confident and strong in my voice and feel really empowered and proud and excited to lean into that space? And it doesn't mean we have to stop taking care of people. It doesn't mean we have to be mean or rude. It doesn't mean we have to be
Yes.
selfish.
Mm-hmm.
It's viewing it all from a different way, where if we're really thinking about ourselves first, and if I'm really being intentional and saying like, actually, I do want to do that, and I'm going to say yes, I'm going to show up in such a different way than if
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying yes to the things because I feel like I'm supposed to. Then
Yeah.
what's the point of me even really being there? Or it could cause a bigger problem later on.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I can't hardly get through a day without referencing Brene Brown, and I acknowledge that, and my listeners are like, yeah, Meg, we know. But she did a longitudinal study, and the people who have the most space for compassion, the people who have the strongest boundaries, because they're not filling that space, that emotional space, with resentment. They're
Yep.
saying yes intentionally because they want to be there,
Yep.
versus lugging around the yes because I have to, or I felt compelled. You're not showing up at your best space there.
No. And if you're always putting everyone else, even especially for your listeners, your kids, if you're always putting them first in a
Yes.
way that is putting you last, that's not helpful to your kids, and it's definitely not helpful to you. And
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a way to say, in this role, I will take more of a backseat at times, or I will be smaller. I have to show up differently for my 4-year-old
Yes.
than I have to as a friend, to my 30-year-old friend.
Yes. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's still considering yourself. And even if you're saying, okay, kid, I'll read you the story for the 7th time, even if I don't want to, but I'm making the choice to do it,
Uh-huh.
that's a different engagement than, "Ugh, I have to read this story," right? No, I'm gonna read it. I'm kind of over it. This is the last time, like, fine. But
Yeah.
I'm still stepping into that and choosing it. I'm not feeling like someone's making me. Because in
Yes.
that moment, you're giving your 4-year-old power that they don't deserve or need. And you're
Yes.
losing it for yourself, right? Like, I think we can still do things we don't love or want, but still within our own power. And that's
Yes.
that mindset shift.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. The way that you've put that, and you're very right. I think I wish we could come up with a new word for selfish. Like, there's selfish, I'm going to take care of myself. Like, so I apologize. I've been having a sinus infection all week. So those of you who are watching on YouTube are going to see that I keep muting myself and coughing. And those of you who are on audio only are like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. So anyway, but yeah, and be like, there's a difference between like I like the Backstreet Boys and you hate the Backstreet Boys, but I'm driving, so I'm going to make you listen to the Backstreet Boys. That's a bad kind of selfish. That's a not thoughtful kind of thing. But the space of saying like, I don't have the capacity for that, or I don't have the energy, or that's not something I'm interested in. Or, and also too, you go into, I mean, we could have another full conversation about that. The boundaries that you set and show for your children are so important, not only for them understanding that they don't always get their way, but being able to say like, okay, I'm going to read it 2 more times and then we're done. So okay, now 1 more time, and kind of setting them up for a transition. But also for them, if they choose to get married, if they choose to have children, which you don't have to do one to have the other, they can see when you set those boundaries that that's how you, what you expect from a partner. That's what you expect of your children, that you as a parent yourself, should you decide to have children, which I constantly tell my kids, like, I mean, they're only 2 and 4, but I'm
Really
like,
think
no
about it.
expectations of you.
Yeah.
It's your one beautiful life. But to say like, we don't need to make ourselves burnt out, and we don't always have to put other people first, including the children that we brought into this world in one way or another. It's a really good, it's that same conversation. Like, what would you say to a friend? Like, what would you say to your daughter if she was a mother
Mm-hmm.
and she was behaving this way? You would tell
Mm-hmm.
her, get some help, take a break, da, 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 blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
But it's so hard for us to do that. We have these expectations of ourselves, and it's a good thing to do that.
Yeah. And I think it's also just continuing to break out of that cycle of, we don't have to make everybody happy. Me saying like, I'm not
Right?
going to read the bedtime story for the 7th time and your kid being upset doesn't mean you're a bad mom or like you've ruined them. It's just that they didn't like the boundary you set, but the boundary was important for you.
Yes. Yes.
Or I'm not going to actually go to your holiday party. Sorry. Your friend might be disappointed or try to like guilt trip you, or your parents are mad you're not coming home for Christmas or whatever else, but the boundary is not there for them. It's for you.
Yes.
And ultimately, it doesn't serve you to be the one that's miserable because you're in charge of your life. You're in your driver's seat. Like, stop letting other people drive you around your life. It is, I mean, I think selfish is a fine word. Like, you're allowed to be selfish. Like, this is my life. This is my time. This is my energy. This is my space. This is my choices. And we can make whatever ones we make, and people can make theirs, right? And I think we need to stop being so caught up and hurt and worried and offended and involved in everyone else's, because that's theirs to make. It
Yeah.
might have impacts on us. We can have our feelings, but like at the end of the day, it's not that personal. It really isn't. It's more like, what's my relationship with myself? And if I'm taking care of that, all the others are gonna be pretty okay. It's when we're not taking care of this one and we're not on the same page with ourselves that we find there's a lot more turmoil and trouble in the other areas of our lives,
Yeah.
which feels counterintuitive for what we've been taught, but that's actually the way that it works.
We have, I do. So I'm a therapist, obviously you know that. And when you listen to the first episode with Alisha, you will hear this story, but you're the reason that I got into it. I said I don't want to be a therapist. And you're like, I'm in social work school, check it out. And that's how I became a social worker. And so I do a lot of unpacking of that. I do have those conversations with people where they're like, why am I not content in this way? Why does it feel icky when I set boundaries? Why does it And it's like, because, I mean, not to be too Barbie, but like, because the patriarchal capitalistic society has taught AFAB humans that we have to be quiet and take care and fix and do and cook and caretake.
Yeah.
Always. I mean, even to the point of the Barbie movie, if you all haven't seen the beginning of it, talks about there were baby dolls because that's what little girls were taught to do, was to take care of babies because you'll grow up and make babies. And so I do a lot of unpacking of that with people. They're like, why am I still stressed? Like, I know that I need to take up space. I know that I can relax. I know that what I'm doing is enough, air quotes, enough. And yet I'm like, yeah, well, that's that core belief that's an external voice that's feeding into that core belief.
Yeah. And that's why I think with the things I'm trying to offer for coaching, I'm going to have a digital course coming out sometime next year called Reclaim Your Yes.
Yes.
Around those like top 5 or 6 areas that we have such a hard time doing that, like physical health, mental health, interpersonal relationships, family, with our own self-talk, with our time management and work balance.
Mhm.
And I'm also starting a awesome book club with a twist experience in January. It'll be 1 year long. We're going to read 6 books. So every 2 months, you get 2 months on the books because they're all going to be a bit meatier than your average fiction or biography that maybe you're reading in your local book club that often consists of lots of wine and cheese and talking about the latest goss, which is great. Keep that one
Love
too.
it.
But
Of course.
in this one, we're going to have an awesome community where year long you can dive into that community space and connect with the other members ongoing. They could be sidebars, it could be about the books, but then there will be a monthly meetup each month where we're going to connect and talk through more of like that coaching perspective of, okay, what are we getting out of this book and how are you applying it to your life and how are you moving the needle in these different areas?
Yes.
And I'm also going to create a really nice like journal, that curated journal that you'll use while you go through the books to really take the most out, because I'm choosing more of the self-help world books, but I've been reading a lot and I'm thinking very thoughtfully about which ones I choose, but they will touch on some of those similar topics. And I think that this is a small way we can, or a big way, that we can begin to do something about the things we're talking about, right? Because, okay, we know we've been socialized a certain way, but like now what? Or this like tool here is helpful or that, but this is really getting to like the core of maybe you're kind of strong in certain areas. So that will be a little bit of an easier section, but you're still going to learn something. But maybe there's parts you're really struggling, the way you talk to yourself, the way you set boundaries with your family, the way you do X, Y, or Z. And so that's where we want to dive in even deeper. And I love to connect people. I love to talk with people. I obviously don't know all the things. And the beautiful thing about coaching is I'm not supposed to know all the
Not
things.
supposed to.
But I want to bring us all together to really learn from other great writers, learn from each other, and create that space where we're not alone in this and we're all sort of struggling with similar stuff. And some of us have strengths where others don't. So we can like help and lean on and grow together. So I'm really pumped about it. I think it's going to be a really, I've tried to like Google that. I haven't really seen this done before in this way totally. So I'm excited to see how it goes, but I think it can be a really rich experience. So
I can't wait. I'm like, go ahead and launch it now. You are also, honestly, you're such an inspiration to me because you're all the time like, hey guys, I just finished this book. Hey guys, I just finished this book. Here's what I think about it. Here's what I liked it. Here's what I didn't like. Do read it, don't read it, whatever. And I don't, and I'm very intentional. My mom and I had this conversation this week. I do not make time to read. I think I've kind of gotten into a pattern. We put the kids down, we sit down and watch Welcome to Wrexham or When and Ted Lasso, like we catch up on whatever on TV, Abbott Elementary. And it's lovely because we talk about the things that we're watching. It's not entirely passive, but I do, gosh, there's something about like, wouldn't it be nice if we just both sat on the couch and read next to each other and we could talk about what we're reading, sir? So I want to be more, and that's why I'm really motivated by the book club, because I haven't heard anything like this really before. I mean, certainly again, your local gal pals or whatever.
Or Reese puts up like her book of the month and everyone reads it. But again, you're not, and maybe there's a space where I'm not in it, but like it's fiction, which there's a space for that. I love those too. But it's a little more just get reading more and read more fun books. Whereas this, I really want it to be about like self-growth beyond just, I read a self-help book. I don't know. There was some good stuff in it, right?
I think
can we proactively integrate it and really use it?
That's what's really nice about having that space. I had a group of my girlfriends. We used to do a book club when life was a little, well, during quarantine when we had more time.
All the time.
excuses. But yeah, so we read like adult children of immature parents, and like we would read a chapter and each week we would meet on Zoom and we would talk about it, unpack it, because it was meaningful to them with their childhoods. And we read Whitney Cummings' book and we were reading that by chapter, and like, but then really unpacking it, like I use that term colloquially, not therapeutically. We would just kind of talk about the things, like we would take notes and talk with you about it. And it's so nice when you read something like, I remember I read Untamed by Glennon Doyle and then bought it for like 7 different people, and like you wanted somebody to talk to about it, like just happened, like yes. And so it's really, really exciting, and I can't wait for you to officially launch it, and I can't wait to meet some new people. And I know certainly we've got some friends who are also going to be in it too, and get to connect and communicate with them in different ways. And it's really, I'm so excited. It's a genius, brilliant idea, and people are going to get so much out of it.
And I can't take all the credit. And my good friend Brittany looked at me on her bachelorette trip at like 1 a.m. while we were sitting in the hot tub, just relaxing after the day. And she was like, you should start a book club. And I was like, okay. And then
Shout out
here
to
we are.
Brittany.
So thank you, Brittany. Shout out
Love
to her.
Brittany.
But yes, she too loves to read and loves a good book club, and it just kind of evolved. And I think that's the beauty too about starting another business, and it's with more freedom. I don't want to do stuff I don't want to do. So I
Yeah.
would want to do this. So I'm going to make a product I would want to buy because my market audience is myself, people like me,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I think that also gets exciting where I do love therapy. I love being in that role. It's very fulfilling, but it's just very different. And I don't get to be as much myself. That's not the purpose of it, me in that space. And so this gets to tap into some other parts of me that don't always get to be as forward in,
Yeah.
the therapist hat. So it will go on sale Black Friday. It'll be a huge, awesome sale, over 50% off for like 3 or 4 days starting Black Friday, and then it will go back to its normal, but it's a monthly fee, so it won't be too much of a huge cost at the beginning.
Yeah.
And you'll get a little welcome gift. Books are not included, but all these books you can get from your library for the most
Library.
part.
Yeah.
You can do on Audible, Kindle. Nothing's too expensive, so it
Yeah.
shouldn't be too much of an extra cost.
As we discussed last week, it's not like making somebody buy a DSM for
Right.
$160.
Yeah. None of the books I'm choosing are above like probably 20 would be the highest
Yeah.
if you really wanted the hardcover. So
Yes.
yeah.
And listeners, this is my soapbox. I talk to my students about this all the time at KU. Like, go to your local library, or don't even go now. Everything's digital.
Use
You
it on
can
your,
rent
I use the app. I get
on
library
the
books
app,
all the
and
time.
the
Yeah.
you can get a lot of them have audio components. Some of them have, I think some of them have CDs still, but whose car has a CD player or computer
I have
anymore?
a CD player.
Right? Like I don't have.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and certainly the digital versions, or even if you like the feel of the paperback in your hand, and then certainly the ones that you feel more inclined to certain purchase. And I love highlighting and writing all over books and keeping notes as well. But that'll be really, really great. And the monthly fee is nice too, because I know sometimes that can be the sticker shock of like, for this much for the year, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's the holidays, so at least you won't owe it all at once. But
Yeah. I was thinking when you were talking about, like, again, coming back to like, we're talking about reclaiming your yes and talking about finding your voice. There was a Nicola Jane Hobbs quote where she was talking about like growing up, she never knew a relaxed woman. Like, again, this comes back to, and again, coaching is all future oriented, but the therapist Meg, of course, is going to bring it past some too. But she was talking about like anxious, productive, successful, yes, but like people who, she doesn't know women who are not afraid to take up space in the world or prioritize rest and permission to relax. And I talk a lot about rest as productive and how hard that is for
yeah.
people,
Yeah.
especially AFAB women. Like I just, it's so interesting because we were told how to be meek and mild little girls and to do, and it's like, how do we become that person who is unapologetically restful? And how do we unapologetically say no sometimes?
Yeah. And how do we unapologetically use our voice and get loud sometimes? And
Yes.
big and take up space, because that doesn't always have to be abrasive or braggy or boastful or bitchy or whatever other words, people
Yeah.
conceited. I think there's room for all of it. And there's room for all the different personalities in between. And it's just kind of figuring out what your thumbprint, and it will evolve, I think, too, in different seasons and different roles and different spaces. But again, it's coming in with the intention of I'm choosing X, Y, and Z. I'm owning this. I know I'm doing this. I'm not like letting it happen to me, or I'm not saying, well, someone else made me do it, or that's what I had to do. Right. And I'll just caveat, obviously, there are situations where safety is involved and we need to act in a way that will keep us alive and safe. And this is not necessarily the message for those type of scenarios, relationships, environments. But let's assume everyone is safe, there's not abuse occurring, that it is okay to really step into your own power. Then I think that's something to consider. And it sounds a little scary, but it can be so freeing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can always learn how to do it. I don't know if we're ever going to be done, but it gets more comfortable. We get more familiar with it. We can notice when we're not, we're sitting back in the passenger seat and we're like, oh, what am I doing? Like, let me get back in that driver's seat. And I think that can be just that ongoing check-in that we get more familiar with over time. So
that's an important thing too. I think people often, especially in therapy, but I imagine also in your coaching experiences, they have this idea of like a finish line or the end zone. Like, if I do this, then I'm going to be here and I'm never going to. And I'm like, I can be the best therapist in the world and I can never guarantee you a perfect day every day, but I can't, like, life happens. And I don't want to be bleak, but life's hard.
Yeah.
And it's instead being able to reframe the way that you're looking at things and be more responsive and less reactive and being intentional about those thoughts. And yeah, and that's the thing too, right? Like, you can't really have a lot of change without some discomfort.
No. And I think that something that I've always tried to live by is the minute you get comfortable, you need to start doing something different. Because if you're comfortable, like, you're not growing and something's wrong. So it's not to say you're constantly uncomfortable and uncertain and untethered, but the minute you're complacent, things feel so easy, everything's wonderful, like, you've probably stopped growing, and that's not helpful. So what needs to switch up? Whether you literally need to move, you need to change relationships, you need to change jobs, you just need to, like, reorganize your bedroom, you need to pick up a new habit, you need to do a different workout. Like, it doesn't have, you need to eat a little different breakfast. Like, it doesn't have to be so dramatic, but it usually means we need to keep moving the needle a bit.
Yeah.
Because we're getting stuck, and that's going to end up working against us over time,
Well, and I've had this conversation with multiple clients this week, even about how long does it take to create a habit? How long have you been doing the habit? The expectation, even once you have this coaching in your life, of like, okay, I've been doing it for 6 weeks, let's go. And it's like, yes, but you've been doing that behavior for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I'm 38. Like, you were almost 30. Well, I won't say your age out loud, but it is November, the month of Alisha. Alisha, your name is not Alicia. Alisha. Sorry, I just had a flashback to when we met and I put your name in my phone and I typed it, Alicia, and you're like, actually, it's spelled phonetic. I was like, oh, okay.
There's me where I'll be loud about it. Do not spell my name wrong.
Right? And also, how terrible would it be? Of course, now at this point, I would have figured it out, but like.
Great, but if I was so polite about it and you had spelled my name wrong for my whole life, like,
I would have left at this point. I would have left it in my phone that way as a joke. But like, and then I would have. At some point, honestly, too, that's, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I'm like such a reference queen. But one of my supervisees today was talking about, like, straightforwardness is compassion. Like, having expectations of somebody up front and being candid is the kind thing to do. Because think about how awkward that conversation would have been for us. And it's not the end of the world. How you spell your name is important, but like, we would have gotten to know each other in other ways. But like, then weeks, months, a year later, having to be like, by the way, that's not how you spell my name. Versus just saying in the moment. And it's so hard for some people. It's so hard. It's like sending back soup at a restaurant. It's so hard for some people, but it's like, look, a mistake was made. I don't hate you. This is not what I ordered. I'd like it fixed. But that's impossible for some people. Impossible.
Yeah.
Not impossible. Feels impossible. Is possible.
Definitely not impossible, but feels like it would be the end of the world to do that.
Yes. It's like, I'm reading Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, right now, and I love it. It's amazing, and it's very helpful for me, and it's helpful for like kind of helping me figure out how I want to be a parent. And it talks about the difference between like a fixed and a growth mindset, and people who are like have a fixed mindset. You're born with a certain level of intelligence and ability, and that's kind of it. And those are the people who want to do the same puzzle over and over again because they figured it out, and that feels really good, versus people with the growth mindset of like, I'm really excited to be challenged and try something new. And it's hard because you're putting yourself out there. But I think that's the other thing too. I feel like the world these days expects us to always have a yes, have the answer, not a yes, but an answer. And I try so hard to every day to be like, I don't know. Let's look that up, or I'm not sure, but saying I don't know, I think is kind of taboo. I don't know how we kind of got there in society, but I think it's a good thing to have that growth mindset and say, like, I'm going to suck at this. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're not going to be a good coaching client if you don't have a growth mindset. You can't coach someone who's in a fixed mindset
Right.
because there's no movement to be made. So
Right.
you could potentially try to do some like forever therapy that doesn't go anywhere with someone with a fixed
Yeah.
mindset, but you're definitely not doing coaching. Like that person
No.
has to be in that growth space, change space.
Well, and how
And
interesting would that be if people recognize that they were in a fixed mindset and came to coaching with like, but I'm willing to listen. Like
and I'd argue they're not fixed. Then they're already a little bit outside of that, right?
sure. Well, I think that there's a spectrum too.
Yeah.
I think there are people who have mostly a fixed mindset who also would be like, okay, now give me the harder puzzle. I haven't finished the book yet. I'll have to come back. Well, next time I will have finished the book and we'll see if it really is a binary or if it's a spectrum. Because I don't think, but yeah, so that would be a really interesting thing to see. Like I recognize that I used to feel like my intelligence was all that I was born with and I can't change it. And now I'm hoping to be proved wrong. I'm hoping to stretch.
And some stuff I think you can't be 5 inches taller if you're just not 5 inches taller unless you wear really big heels, right? Like some of that I think is fine. And that's where we accept where we do have limitations or where there are places of like literal growth will no longer happen. But it always goes back to our feeling management, our mood, our goals, our emotional intelligence, our literal what we just like know and learn. I think connections, like all of that can constantly be cultivated and changed and grow in some capacity. Like, no, maybe your IQ can't get higher, but you could still learn more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like the two are not mutually exclusive, right? So
Yeah.
I think that it's kind of leaning into what we do have power over, what can change, what we can put our energies toward, and kind of leaving what we don't. And if we're spinning our wheels about the stuff we're trying to like, I just want to grow 2 more inches at 30 something, well, you're going to be there all day, bro. Like it's not going to happen, so like, let's get over here of what can I do at my height currently that I think I need to be 2 more inches for, and like put my energy into making those things happen at my current.
But I like that the analogy of height, right? Like I need to be taller so I can be a better volleyball player, basketball player, whatever. I'm like, right, but like look at Muggsy Bogues or look at, I'm so sorry, I don't know enough about volleyball to mention a short volleyball player, but like, and I don't know enough about volleyball to even make the reference, but I guarantee you that there are good volleyball players who are not 6 feet tall because they're the diggers, they're the setters, they're, right? Like
my mom's only 5'4". She's really good at volleyball.
Right? Like, so just because like, yes, it would be nice. The height would be nice so you can block and spike, but like also you can practice jumping anyway, and you can gain on your vertical versus anyway. So I think we're belaboring the point, but it is something to keep in mind with your mental health and your goals to say like, if you've been doing something in a way that's maladaptive for however many years, the 6 weeks of coaching or however long you're using is not automatic, but it's just the intention and the awareness. And those are kind of some of the first steps of where we can go.
And you can set goals and you can reach them.
Yeah.
And not every goal has to be monumental.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you just gotta do something. If there's no action, nothing's happening.
Yeah.
So it's taking those first steps.
So I'm obviously, like I said, I'm putting your stuff in the bio, but again, I'm going to push. She's got a newsletter. Go out and listen to it. Tell me about the Tuesday Tea.
Tuesday Tea is my little email series that folks will get on Tuesdays. I don't even really like tea that much myself, but it rhymed best. So I like Tuesday coffee or Tuesday smoothie, but Tuesday beverage, but Tuesday, I'm here for like a good alliteration. So
smoothie would have been amazing because you have that amazing smoothie shop by your
basically I have what do I have? A sip of the week, so a little topic, and then a post-tea pursuit, so a little challenge, and then always updates about things that are coming down the pipeline. It's never too long. The idea would be that it's bite-sized, digestible, just another little thing to get you thinking a little differently or remind you of something or set one of those little small goals. Sometimes just coming up with goals is hard. So I always put one in there, a challenge for you that you can kind of make your own. And I'm here to keep you accountable if you want to let me know about it or tell friends. And it's just a way to stay connected and stay in the loop about all the exciting things that I will be rolling out as this
Yes.
business continues to grow. I also do have one other little tool that can be really helpful this time of year. Speaking of things being challenging or feeling like things can't change or not knowing how to use our voice in situations, I know the holidays, while very awesome and exciting and fun for some, can mean stress and doom and terror and avoidance. And I want to close my eyes and wake up and have it be January.
Sure.
So I put together a very easy to use workbook on
Yes.
how to thrive, not just survive this holiday season. It
Mhm.
touches on how to set expectations with loved ones around the
Yes.
holiday. Some of the biggest
Yes.
things I get asked, especially by if I have parent clients, is, how do I tell my family we're not coming to all the houses Christmas morning? How do we talk about that, right? Because that
Yeah.
doesn't sound like fun for you. That's fun for them, but you're just schlepping your kids around and it wasn't a good day, right? For
Yes.
some people, that's their jam, but for others, I feel like they want to get out of that expectation. So how do we set those early? How do we do them compassionately and clearly? One around just navigating holiday stress. Financially, it can be hard, especially in such a consumer society. It seems like more and more and more, and you need to spend this
Goodness.
much and get this, and that can be hard and tight at the end of the year or for
Yes.
certain budgets, and especially just these days, everything's expensive. So
Mhm.
how to just navigate the stress of finances, of parties, of obligations, of et cetera, and then how to navigate triggers. Unfortunately, I think really hard things happen around this time of year, or we notice them more. So deaths, losses, um, just fallouts with family. And now you have to see those family members that you don't normally talk to. Maybe you have really different beliefs within the family. And so sitting around a table can feel really triggering and hard to do with certain people. Maybe you feel really lonely because you don't have anyone. And so that is triggering in a different way. And then how to just like reconnect with your meaning of the season, like your joy. What does Christmas actually mean for you? Because it doesn't have to mean what it means for everyone else. But if I sat down and really thought about it, like, what am I connected to about this time of year and how can I really capitalize on that? So it's a quick but very rich workbook. And then you'll also get an email every Monday in December from me, diving in a little deeper with a short video on each of those topics, just to really round that out. And it's only $9. So it's like a steal. But this could be the gift you give yourself. This is where you practice putting yourself at the top instead of everyone else and map out the season so it's joyful and exciting and different than you imagined it could be. It doesn't
Mhm.
have to just keep being a hard time of year because it's always been a hard time of year. I'm not saying it'll be magically just glamorous, but it can be different. It doesn't have to be what it has been. And I
Mhm.
think that we all can make those little moves and they'll have such a huge impact.
That's
So,
absolutely right. Yeah, right. Like you're talking about setting those expectations and how do you feel confident in finding the language and sometimes honestly even getting to a space where you realize that you can set that expectation and you
yeah.
do run your own life. And I mean, some of you, if you're listening and you're underage, you're like, well, no, I have to go to grandma's. I'm like, well, you might, but also have that conversation in a meaningful way. Can I
Yep.
go to grandma's, but I also want to go to my girlfriend's or whatever that looks like. So, and being able, again, I just want to reiterate what you already just said, right? Like it doesn't magically guarantee a magnificent holiday. It does help you to be present in the moment and intentional about the conversations and the boundaries you're setting, to have the awareness of some of these things. And that really can make small incremental changes and sometimes big changes in the ways that you have, in the dread that you might have of like, oh, here we go, another year, versus I am going to participate in these ways and that's going to help it feel more manageable to me. Checking in with yourself, all of that, just so helpful.
Yep.
um yes, and I've read it, so I can tell. There's your testimonial that I very much agree with everything that's in it too. So, not that it matters, but there you go.
Oh, yeah. It's helpful.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I think it's lots of good things on the horizon and maybe there'll even be some collabs in the future
Yes.
as we both continue to kind of grow and have all these new projects. But I think overall, just my big message is you drive your own life. Don't
Mhm.
forget that. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Mhm.
And you get to make those choices and you get to make those decisions and to step into that with confidence and to feel really empowered and emboldened. Sometimes it's scary as shit, but it's also so incredible at the end of it. And sometimes it's going to be the wrong turn and we're going to have to like go back and our Google Maps goes offline and whatever else, right? It's not all a perfect road, but we are still choosing it and we're still doing it and we still have ownership over it. And that changes everything. When something's taken away from us or we give that away, such a different experience. And the
Mhm.
bad feels worse and this feels harder. And it's just, it doesn't have to be so, right? Like if someone isn't actively, literally taking our choice and freedom from us, for many of us probably listening, that is not the case right now, then why are we just handing it out freely and why are we
Yes.
giving it away so readily? So.
Yes. Lovely. Lovely. Alisha Bowker Mudrock, AKM Coaching. All of this will be in the show notes. Please go follow her on Instagram, sign up for her newsletter, join us both in the book club. I will be there with bells on. I can't wait. Yeah, and then I'm going to be a little annoying right now, everybody. Please make sure that you like and subscribe. If you have a minute for some 5 stars, that'd be great. Maybe a little blurb, I would appreciate it. If you're on the YouTube side of things, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, all that. I hate having to say that, but also you all showing up and listening is what keeps the lights on around here. So I really appreciate that. Alisha, thank you so much for coming back. I will put the link to our other episode. Now finish this one and go listen to the other one because that one was beautiful as well. And everyone out there, be curious, not judgmental. Goodbye.